Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 6, The Golden Age of Awakening. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Qin Ming's heart stirred. Could the technique he had been told he would never master now be perfected and fully integrated? He had returned from the wilderness feeling as if a fire burned within him, making even the depths of winter feel warm. The surge of strength throughout his body was no illusion. With a flick of his toes, he lifted the stone roller in the courtyard off the ground. He leapt into the air, experiencing a strong sense of weightlessness, and snatched a handful of snow from the eaves. When he exhaled, a stream of white chi shot out like a long spear wreathed in mist, accompanied by a sharp crackling sound. Qin Ming's abdominal breathing grew more intense with each movement. His ethereal form danced through the courtyard, stirring the snow into a swirling vortex that sent flurries of goose-down flakes raining down once more. With a single movement, every part of his body followed. He swung his arm horizontally, shattering the swirling snowflakes before him. The vitality of his flesh and blood had surged dramatically. His body burned with heat, and silver patterns intertwined within his pores, releasing streams of sweat as if purifying his form. Qin Ming felt a profound sense of ease, his entire being enveloped in a faint silver light. Such a phenomenon was rare even during the awakening process. He trained for a long time, expending a great amount of energy. Only when he truly felt exhausted did he finally stop. Qin Ming felt himself changing, a process he believed was nearing completion. He was confident his wish would be fulfilled soon. He didn't return to his room. Instead, he sat quietly in the courtyard, letting the swirling snowflakes drift onto him. He remained unfazed by the biting cold, his body radiating warmth. This was completely different from before. When he had first recovered from his illness, he had shivered even wrapped in thick cotton blankets on a heated bed. Qin Ming closed his eyes and visualized himself, repeating the complex movements he had performed earlier to train his mental power. The silver ripples that had just faded reappeared, his breathing now guided by his thoughts, constantly adjusting and becoming increasingly complex, defying any discernible pattern. Thoughts originate in the spirit, chi is moved by intention, and the flowing light on his skin brightened slightly as a result. The courtyard fell silent, Qin Ming covered in snowflakes. After a long time, he emptied his mind, letting go of all thoughts and distractions. Only when the silver light completely vanished did he slowly open his eyes, sensing the changes within him. He was certain a vibrant new life force was brewing within his body. Qin Ming effortlessly lifted the 200-pound millstone from the courtyard, then gently set it back down. Awakening will likely be complete within 2 days, he thought, a sense of certainty filling him. At this moment, Qin Ming felt hunger, as expected, and it was intense. He cooked a pot of mushroom soup and treated walnuts, almonds, and chestnuts as the main course, with red dates and hawthorns as side dishes. He ate with great satisfaction. After sufficient rest, a new round of training began. He wanted to accelerate the process of his awakening. Qin Ming moved like a released bowstring, his strikes as explosive as thunder, stirring up snowflakes throughout the courtyard. The vitality in his flesh and blood grew stronger with each movement. He rested when tired, feasted on dried fruits when hungry, and resumed training after regaining his energy. From shallow night until deep into the night, a vibrant life force surged through him. Before bed, he washed with ice-cold water, but felt no chill. His slender, muscular body, devoid of any excess fat, was taut and streamlined. His wet black hair, still beaded with water droplets, gleamed under the fiery glow of the sunstone, radiating a powerful aura. That night, he slept soundly, having no dreams, sinking into the deepest level of sleep. Because he was accelerating his awakening, his body was constantly infused with fresh vitality. The next day, Qin Ming's appetite had increased dramatically. He was now eating 7 meals a day. The main reason was the immense energy expenditure required for his innate ability transformation. Even the most delicious food becomes tiresome after eating it for many meals in a row. Moreover, it was all dried goods, and he needed hot water to eat it with. Too bad there aren't many mushrooms left. I can't even make a fresh soup, Qin Ming lamented. What truly troubled him was the dwindling food supply. At this rate, it would only last another day. Am I a bottomless pit? Half a sack of dried goods only lasted 3 days, Qin Ming muttered to himself. The technique that aided his awakening couldn't stop. When still, he was like a towering mountain. When moving, he was like an eagle soaring through the sky. The silver light emanating from his pores grew increasingly intense. He could genuinely feel his physical strength improving, not suddenly, but gradually. Qin Ming walked to the side of the courtyard and attempted to lift the 2 millstones, one above the other. With a sudden burst of force, he managed to lift them off the ground. Lu Zi happened to push open the courtyard gate at that moment, his eyes widening in astonishment. Xiao Qin, what is this? He stammered, his expression a mixture of surprise and disbelief. Just yesterday, he had felt sorry for Qin Ming, believing he would miss the golden age of awakening. Today, he witnessed this incredible feat. Hearing the commotion, Liang Wanqing, who lived in the courtyard next door, also came over. When she learned what had happened, she was left speechless. Just like Bingzi from the neighboring village, Qinming can lift over 400 jin of weight right after his awakening, Lu Zi said, genuinely happy for him. Awakening during the Golden Age, Xiao Qin has truly done it, Liang Wanqing said. In all these years, he's the first in Twin Tree Village to achieve this. Uncle, you're amazing. When Rui ran over, his big eyes sparkling as he looked up at Qinming, his face filled with admiration. I feel like the changes from my awakening are still ongoing, Qinming said. He realized that the process would take longer than he had initially anticipated and was far from complete. Liang Wanqing's expression turned shocked. Even those who awaken during the Golden Age in our region usually reach their limit at 500 jin after stabilizing. Xiao Qin, you're not about to break through, are you? They say there's a young man in that bright city far away who can lift 600 jin, Lu Zi said, eager to see how high Qinming's awakening would take him. Suddenly, a commotion erupted in the street. Liang Wanqing went out to investigate and quickly returned. Granny Zhou from the Zhou family is not doing well, she reported. Qinming had seen her on the road just yesterday. Recalling her frail frame and pale complexion, he realized her condition had indeed been alarming. What happened? Lu Zi asked. Liang Wanqing sighed. They say she's been eating too little lately. Coupled with her already poor health, it all caught up with her. Qinming and Lu Zi went out to the street to learn more. Granny Zhou's son had been away recently and returned not with food but with a serious injury, a broken bone in his right arm. This winter, food was scarce for everyone. With the family's breadwinner incapacitated, Granny Zhou had been deeply worried. Every day, she secretly set aside her own portion of food, taking only a small amount to stave off hunger. When Qinming and Lu Zi arrived at the Zhou family's courtyard, a crowd had already gathered. Inside the house, they found Granny Zhou lying motionless, her face waxen and still. Her two grandchildren were kneeling nearby, tears streaming down their faces as they cried out for their grandmother. Before passing, Granny Zhou had told them where to find the food she'd hidden, sweet potatoes and stale buns tucked away in a bamboo basket beneath the snow. Even the nuts Qinming had given her, she hadn't eaten a single one. It was only today that Zhou Changyu's family learned the truth. Granny Zhou had been scrimping and saving, carefully setting aside her own rations. She feared her critically wounded son, Zhou Changyu, might never return with food again, and she worried her grandson and granddaughter would starve. So she chose to eat less, or not at all, herself. When Zhou Changyu learned the truth, his heart shattered. The nearly 30-year-old man wept openly, furiously slapping his own face, calling himself useless, unfilial, and blind for not having discovered this sooner. His wife knelt beside him, her wails of grief echoing through the courtyard. Many in the crowd sighed, for in these times of disaster, the entire region was suffering from a severe shortage of food and clothing. Life was incredibly difficult. Qinming felt a lump form in his throat. Just 2 days ago, when he'd seen Granny Zhou looking pale and frail, she had tremblingly pulled out a few pieces of dried sweet potato and tried to press them into his hand. Now it was clear, those were the rations she had been secretly saving each day. What a kind woman, gone too soon. Qinming stood in silence for a long time. After shallow night ended, the crowd gradually dispersed. Qinming returned, carrying a cloth bag filled with 5 pounds of nuts. He handed it to Zhou Changyu, offering his condolences. Brother Qin. Zhou Changyu's eyes were red as he tried to refuse. He knew how difficult it was to find food in the wild these days. Qinming pressed the bag into his hands and turned to leave. It was already late, yet the Zhou family's cries still echoed through the night. Qinming sat in the pitch-black courtyard. While others had family to mourn for, he was haunted by the fading faces in his memory. He feared the day he would forget them completely, losing every trace of their existence. On this frigid winter night, he gazed at the starless sky, lost in thought for a long time. An indescribable loneliness washed over him. In his mind, a hazy glow flickered, dim figures he longed to see clearly. Yet he could never grasp those faded childhood memories, no matter how hard he tried. Suddenly, a chilling aura swept over him, oppressive and suffocating. Qinming's body tensed instantly. In the inky darkness, 2 golden lanterns materialized, mysterious and terrifying. The tranquil winter night erupted into a furious storm. Snow swirled violently, and the roof of the house trembled as if about to be torn off. Across the abyss-like sky, the golden lanterns soared, accompanied by a gale that carried an overwhelming sense of dread, making it hard to breathe. Qinming's pupils contracted. He guessed it was a high-level spirit, impossibly massive, its wings blotting out the sky like a dark cloud as it passed over Twin Tree Village. Its golden lantern eyes watched as it soared away, the sudden storm that had erupted around it rapidly weakening and then dissipating. A commotion broke out in the village as many people emerged from their homes, murmuring among themselves. The older villagers, who had witnessed similar events before, wore solemn expressions but reassured the younger generation not to panic. They explained that it was likely a higher-level spirit passing through, merely passing by on its journey. Qinming returned from the street and sat in his courtyard for a long time, gazing at the boundless night sky. The darkness enveloped the world, obscuring the path to the distant horizon and making the world seem even more mysterious. A surge of emotion welled up within him, a deep longing to venture out and explore the vast expanse of the land. Finally, he rose resolutely and began practicing the series of specific movements he remembered most clearly from his childhood. Even with a burning desire, strength was essential. Gradually, a surge of vibrant, nascent energy coursed through his body, and a faint mist of light shimmered across his skin. After a long while, he felt an unprecedented hunger. The transformation within him hadn't stopped, it seemed to be intensifying. Qinming ate a large amount of dried goods with hot water, yet still felt unsatisfied. When images of the mutant squirrel and Yang Yongqing's black goat at the village entrance flashed through his mind, he couldn't help but swallow hard. He desperately craved meat. Even the mere thought of it conjured the rich aroma, and he realized his body was sending a clear signal, it needed nourishment. Only after Qinming had devoured a lot of nuts did the unusual craving gradually subside. Looks like I'll have to return to the mountains once shallow night arrives, he muttered. He needed to satisfy his body's demands to ensure the awakening's transformation proceeded without any issues. In truth, after giving the Zhou family 5 caddies of dried goods, his remaining food were already running low. He slept soundly through the night and woke early the next morning. Though his stomach rumbled with hunger, his spirit was exceptionally vibrant. He sensed that his body, having undergone continuous awakening transformation, could now withstand a weight of over 500 caddies. Most importantly, the awakening transformation is still ongoing. This thought filled him with anticipation. What level would he ultimately reach? He began to stretch. First, Qinming arched his back, then violently leaned backward, his entire spine forming an exaggerated crescent moon curve. Each vertebra cracked loudly as his flesh trembled violently. Starting from his tailbone, Yangqi surged upward along his spine, reaching his head. Qinming's entire body tingled as if electrified. His pores opened wide, and a warm glow enveloped him, completely saturated by Yangqi. Simultaneously, a layer of silver light shimmered on his skin, clearer and more distinct than before. There's no doubt this significantly accelerated the process of awakening. Before shallow night had fully arrived, Qinming was already outside the village. The various dried fruits could no longer satisfy his appetite, which seemed insatiable. The thought of rock sheep, night deer, and black-feathered pheasants roasting over a bonfire, their fat sizzling and dripping onto the charcoal, made his mouth water uncontrollably. His feet moved like the wind, and he yearned to rush into the dense forest immediately. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 7, Encounter. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Outside the village, the area was shrouded in darkness that it was impossible to distinguish any landmarks. Few people ventured out at this hour. Uncle Yang. Qinming spotted a burly man not far from the village. Yang Yongqing was surprised. Xiao Qin. It's not even shallow night yet. Why are you out so early? I wanted to try my luck in the wilderness, see if there were any mountain beasts frozen to death, Qinming replied. Yang Yongqing chuckled. We had the same idea. I just finished scouting the area outside the mountain, but unfortunately, I found nothing. Qinming was stunned. This middle-aged man with a full beard was already returning from his patrol. That was incredibly early. How could Uncle Yang be doing the same thing as me? Could he be hunting some kind of rare, spiritual prey, Qinming thought. He knew Yang Yongqing was formidable, one of the few awakened individuals in Twin Tree Village. They had only exchanged a few words when they noticed a dark figure moving in the distance. A mountain patrolman, Yang Yongqing murmured. In an era without the sun, the wilderness was exceptionally dangerous. Only highly skilled individuals could serve as mountain patrolmen, tasked with vigilance and warning. A man in leather armor emerged, tall and imposing. He carried a bow and quiver, gripped an iron spear, and his long hair flowed freely, radiating untamed power. Brother Xiao, Yang Yongqing greeted him first. Xiao Chengfeng nodded. He was around 40 years old, with sharp eyes. He stopped nearby and asked, so young and already traveling with you? Is this that Bingzi? Bingzi is from the next village over. Yang Yongqing explained. Your Twin Tree, Shuangshu village isn't doing so well. There haven't been a single awakened individuals in their golden age for decades, Xiao Chengfeng said bluntly. Yang Yongqing found this normal. Few people in the area could awaken at 15 or 16. Talent couldn't be forced. He spoke up. I never would have guessed Bingzi was this strong back then. I heard he's recovered from his previous physical deficiencies and his physical condition has improved even further recently. Xiao Chengfeng nodded. Indeed, he's quite remarkable. The question is whether he can compare to the top talents from that bright city in the distance. That's difficult. Different lands nurture different people, Yang Yongqing said with a touch of emotion. He had witnessed the city's splendor and understood the brilliance that advanced cultivation manuals could bring. Indeed, Xiao Chengfeng agreed. I heard 2 extraordinary youths have emerged there, surpassing all previous Golden Age awakened individuals. A boy and a girl, stunning the entire region. That place is truly a place of exceptional talents, Yang Yongqing said, his tone filled with admiration rather than envy. The area was far too distant from their own, making any comparison impossible. Qinming listened intently throughout, not interrupting once. After a brief pause, Xiao Chengfeng vanished into the night. No one knew what level of creatures truly resided deep within the dark mountains, or how many dangerous clans lurked there, requiring the mountain patrolmen to monitor and issue warnings from the outer regions. Qinming spoke. Mountain patrolmen must be formidable individuals. Did they enter the mountains every day? Some take their duties very seriously, Yang Yongqing replied. Qinming was taken aback. Did this imply that others were less diligent? He hadn't expected this burly, bearded man to answer so subtly. The situation in the mountains is currently very abnormal and overly dangerous. I suspect the higher authorities will launch a sweeping the mountains operation soon, likely involving young masters and disciples from prominent families. Xiao Qin, you should work hard to become a awakened individual during your golden age, Yang Yongqing said, patting his shoulder. If you catch the eye of a noble lady sent down for the operation, it might change your destiny. The 2 men parted ways, Yang Yongqing returning to the village. Qinming processed the information he'd received as he headed into the wilderness. He moved at incredible speed, cutting through the chest-high snow like a ship cleaving through waves, snow spraying to either side of his path. The night was beginning to lighten, as shallow night approached, and the mountain forest loomed indistinctly in the distance. Qinming stood at the edge of the forest, his senses on high alert. He knew that unseen dangers could lurk in the shadows. His stomach rumbled, sending another wave of hunger through his body. He had forced himself to ignore it earlier when he met an acquaintance on the road, but now his willpower had completely failed. His stomach churned with acid. Gazing into the dark, dense forest, he tightened his grip on his hunting fork and darted inside. He bypassed the mutant squirrel's habitat, crossed a low mountain, and pushed farther than he had before. Deeper into the forest, he found numerous signs of life, scattered animal bones, large hoofprints. The snow wasn't too thick to navigate, many creatures had already trampled out paths. A mournful wail echoed through the trees, like a woman weeping, an eerie sound in the desolate wilderness. Qinming immediately accelerated, searching for the source of the sound. He soon closed in on his destination. In the pitch-black woodland, pairs of emerald eyes stared from the shadows, where more than a dozen creatures lurked. Those unfamiliar with the truth might have been terrified by the weeping sound, but for someone who spent their life in the wilderness, it was an opportunity. Qinming charged forward with his hunting fork, and a flurry of flapping wings erupted. The dozen or so creatures swiftly soared into the night sky, startled by his sudden appearance. These were carnivorous nocturnal birds, each about 2 feet long. They lived in flocks, their cries like ghostly weeping. They preyed on small animals, but sometimes attacked humans as well. Qinming reached the scene in an instant, muttering in disappointment. All that remained on the ground were a pile of blood-stained bones and a few tattered, blood-soaked animal hides. A roe deer had been devoured completely. His attempt to steal their meal had failed. He turned and left immediately, wary of being attacked by the carnivorous night birds. In an open clearing with sparse trees, bloodstains speckled the ground. Footprints larger than a rice bowl indicated a large predator had fed here. The remaining scraps had likely been carried off by other carnivores. As Lu Zi had said, even the outer reaches of the mountains were becoming dangerous. One could only imagine what the deeper regions must be like. Qinming remained vigilant as he left the bloody scene. After a moment, Qinming spotted numerous hoofprints in the snow, immediately perking up and following them. In the darkness, more than 20 dark figures stood ahead. All were large, and their close proximity created a sense of pressure. Blade-horned deer. Qinming exclaimed with delight. In the past, deer herds were rarely seen in this area. He took down his bow and arrow, aiming at a large male deer. These were not docile deer. Adult males possessed 6 horns, 3 on each side of their heads and 1 in front, all flat, sharp, and resembling 6 steel blades. Being struck by them would surely result in fatal wounds. Even some fierce beasts dared not charge them head-on, preferring to attack from behind. A human caught in the midst of such a herd would suffer a terrible fate. Qinming drew his hard bow to its full arc. With a sharp whoosh, the iron arrow shot forth like lightning, piercing the large male deer's lungs. Blade-horned deer were known for their ferocity, fearlessly confronting all predators. Instead of fleeing after being struck, the large male deer charged directly toward Qinming. Briefly startled, the rest of the herd followed suit, thundering forward. Snow flew in all directions, their hooves drumming a frenzied rhythm that shook the entire forest. Qinming didn't panic. He drew his bow again, and his arrow struck the large male deer with unerring accuracy. The iron arrow pierced deep, burying itself completely and causing the large male deer's massive body to shudder. He sheathed his bow and calmly climbed a thick, towering tree, concealing himself several meters above the ground. In the dense forest, aiming at prey from a tree was difficult, with branches obstructing his view. The large male deer, exhausted from running for a while, stumbled and finally collapsed with a thud in the snow. The deer herd, startled by the commotion, came to a halt before scattering with a thunderous rumble. Qinming waited for a moment, scanning for any dangerous mountain beasts. When none appeared, he leapt down from the tree and approached the fallen large male deer with his hunting fork. The black-brown blade-horned deer was exceptionally magnificent, weighing over 700 pounds even in winter. Qinming was immensely satisfied with his prize. The forest was dangerous, so he quickly dragged the blade-horned deer along the path he had taken, hurrying back. He was experiencing the benefits of his awakening status. With his greatly enhanced strength, he moved swiftly through the snow, pulling the heavy prey without feeling fatigued. The wilderness was filled with diverse tree species, such as larch and spruce, some towering dozens of meters high, their silhouettes disappearing into the night. The mountain wind grew stronger, whipping up icy snow pellets that stung Qinming's face. In the howling wind, goosebumps erupted on Qinming's skin as a pair of furry, massive paws landed on his shoulders from behind. Simultaneously, he felt a wave of hot breath against the hairs on his neck. He realized it must be a gaping maw, drawing near, ready to snap his neck. He immediately hunched his shoulders, squatted down, and rolled sideways into the snow. Even so, he was still injured. The paws gripping his shoulders were incredibly powerful, like razor-sharp iron hooks, tearing through his cotton clothing and tearing into his flesh. The snow beneath him exploded, revealing a terrifying black shadow lurking in the snowdrift. Tall, muscular, and enraged, it lunged forward after him. Qinming reacted swiftly, moving across the ground like a slithering snake, narrowly escaping the attack. The savage black shadow attacked again, its razor-sharp claws capable of tearing off an entire face. Its gaping maw revealed rows of gleaming, icy teeth. Qinming didn't have time to stand, but he remained calm. He calmly extended his hands and seized the creature's forelimbs, firmly controlling them. Those terrifyingly large claws were inches from his face, almost touching him, yet they couldn't fall. Now facing the creature head-on, Qinming finally saw its true form. It had a massive donkey head, a wide mouth, and long black mane flowing down its neck. Its body was that of a mountain wolf, incredibly fierce, as it lunged at Qinming's throat. The scene was incredibly dangerous. The hot breath from its blood-red maw, thick with the stench of blood, blasted into Qinming's face. Remaining calm in the face of death, he gripped its forelimbs with all his might, using its own claws to block its fangs. Simultaneously, as he struggled, he coiled his body, bent his legs to gather power, and then kicked out with all his might, slamming his foot into its abdomen. Qinming was experiencing awakening, his strength was now extraordinary. With a single kick, he sent the hundreds of pounds mountain beast tumbling backward across the ground. Donkey-headed wolf. He stared at the black beast before him. It was also known as the mountain rogue, it had the head of a donkey and the body of a mountain wolf, but was far more formidable. A normal specimen weighed at least 180 pounds, but this one was clearly mutated, weighing a full 400 pounds. Any ordinary person who encountered it would surely die. Its long limbs allowed it to stand upright and walk. Some local elders had witnessed the mountain rogue carrying its prey in this bizarre manner. The mutant creature before Qinming was both savage and cunning. The instant it rose, it slammed the hunting fork into the snow. Qinming was stunned. It had truly developed a degree of sentience, understanding how to keep him separated from his weapon. The donkey-headed wolf's eyes burned with ferocity, its thick mane bristling. It suddenly stood upright, towering over Qinming as it roared, its aura overwhelming. Qinming didn't flinch. He drew his short knife from his back and advanced, his body undergoing a profound transformation. He believed he could kill it barehanded if they met head-on. The donkey-headed wolf lunged, its foul breath stirring the snow into a whirlwind. It emitted a deep growl that shook the branches, causing snowflakes to cascade down. Qinming's short knife clashed against its massive paw, producing a sharp, ringing sound. The donkey-headed wolf stood upright, its eyes bloodshot, attempting to embrace Qinming and tear him apart. Qinming moved like lightning, his blade flashing silver. Blood gushed from its mouth as its fangs shattered. He followed up instantly, his right leg like an iron whip, slamming into its side with bone-cracking force. The donkey-headed wolf let out a piercing howl of agony. Qinming lunged forward, pinning the 400-pound donkey-headed wolf to the snow and raining down punches. With a sickening crack, he snapped its neck. The wolf's head twisted grotesquely, its body still. As a mutant creature, its black, oily fur held considerable value, and Qinming had managed to preserve it relatively intact. If an outsider had witnessed this, they would have been horrified. The ferocious mutant donkey-headed wolf had been beaten to death with bare fists. Qinming soon discovered an iron arrowhead lodged in the wolf's body. He was certain this was the same mutant creature that had ambushed him while he was raiding the red squirrel's nest. The distance had been too great for him to get a clear look at the time, but he remembered hitting the creature with an arrow. He touched his shoulder, where the wound was shallow and quickly stopped bleeding. The encounter had been terrifying. If he'd reacted a fraction of a second slower, his shoulders would have been torn apart, and his neck severed. He was exhausted. His stomach rumbled like a drum, and hunger gnawed at him. He desperately wanted to roast a deer leg over an open fire and feast. However, starting a fire in the darkness would be like a lighthouse in the fog, a beacon that would expose him to every creature in the mountains, far too dangerous. Qinming looked down at the donkey-headed wolf at his feet and the bladehorn deer nearby, then glanced at the low mountain ahead. Hauling these two massive carcasses over the mountain would be a major hassle. He decided to lighten his load. The bladehorn deer and donkey-headed wolf had just died, their bodies still warm. He used his short knife to slit their hides, and blood gushed out, staining the snow crimson. Though he was a fair-skinned, handsome youth, Qinming possessed remarkable survival skills, honed by a life spent fending for himself. He worked quickly, efficiently gutting both animals and burying the offal in the snow to mask the scent. Hopefully, there aren't any dangerous mutant creatures nearby, he thought, confident that the outer reaches of the mountain forest were relatively safe. Yet, as he reached the halfway point up the mountain, a colossal commotion erupted in the distance. This was no ordinary sound. It startled countless birds into flight and sent mountain beasts scattering in panic. The scent of blood attracted the giant beast. Qinming frowned deeply, gazing at the dense forest in the distance. The sounds grew louder, accompanied by roars. The snow on the ground churned, and the snapping of tree branches echoed through the air. Soon, he saw a colossal creature, as tall and robust as an armored vehicle, charging through the forest with terrifying ferocity, overturning everything in its path. It was wounded, its body stained with blood. This must be a defeated giant beast, fleeing to this area, not specifically targeting Qinming. He gasped in shock. It was a wild boar, its size utterly terrifying, weighing at least 1,500 pounds. It's worth noting that a wild boar weighing 600 pounds could already claim dominance within its herd. This one dwarfed its peers, its body covered in coarse, steel-like bristles. Its snow-white tusks were longer than an adult's forearm, and its appearance was utterly savage. Qinming wondered to himself, if even such a mighty wild boar king had been defeated, what kind of creature had hunted it down? Qinming had assumed the giant beast would simply pass by the foot of the mountain and disappear into the distance. But its nose twitched, and then it charged straight up the low mountain. Wounded, it was now highly sensitive, and the scent of blood in the forest had triggered its rage. Qinming realized he was in deep trouble. Not only was the giant beast incredibly dangerous, but the mysterious creature hunting it might also follow. Faintly, he could already hear movement in the dense forest in the distance. The wind gradually died down, eventually disappearing altogether. The mountain-sized wild boar king burst through the trees, a savage, hulking beast. It trampled the snow into a frenzy, crashing through everything in its path. Branches snapped and littered the ground, and some withered trees even broke at their trunks. Qinming's expression shifted slightly. He climbed a massive tree that would take several people to encircle, positioning himself high above to shoot arrows at its eyes, heart, and other vital spots as it approached. The colossal wild boar king drew closer, its coarse black fur bristling. When it raised its head, its face became clearly visible. It was covered in black scales that gleamed with a cold, metallic sheen, making it even more terrifying and ferocious. Qinming frowned, completely locked in the gaze of the oppressive wild boar king. He knocked an iron arrow to his bowstring, aiming downward. Suddenly, he felt something was amiss. The forest had fallen silent in an instant. The various birds and raptors that had been soaring into the night sky had vanished, and the fleeing mountain beasts seemed to have disappeared as well. The vast, dense forest was now eerily silent, an unnatural stillness. At the same time, he saw a ball of light rising from a distant mountain peak. It began softly, then quickly grew brilliant, ascending higher and higher. At that moment, the usually ferocious wild boar king dared not make a sound. It retreated silently, careful not to snap any branches, moving with the caution of a kitten. It hid deep within the dense, shadowy undergrowth, finally burrowing into a hollow and burying itself under the snow. In the eternal night era, the sky should have been empty, perpetually shrouded in darkness. Yet now, in the night sky, the ball of light grew brighter, resembling a radiant moon hanging high above. Qinming's heart pounded. He knew that what he was seeing was actually an insect. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 8. Once, I saw rainbow clouds return. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. In this era, darkness enveloped the world. Luminous creatures were rare. When one appeared, it often signaled something terrifying, deadly, and requiring immediate evacuation from its vicinity. The vast wilderness concealed countless dangerous beings. To expose oneself in such a dangerous environment, fearlessly radiating light, was undoubtedly an act of supreme confidence, a likely indication of immense power. Qinming silently slipped beneath a tree, hiding in the dense shadows of the forest. His heart raced. This was no ordinary luminous creature, it illuminated the entire night sky. In an age without sun, moon, or stars, such a spectacle was truly extraordinary. The moon insect. He had heard of it. Elders often told their descendants tales of a distant past when there had been a sun and a moon. Seeing the children's bewildered expressions, they would use the moon insect as an example. If one day you happen to catch sight of the moon insect, you'll know what the moon once looked like. When the moon insect appeared, no one needed to explain. Its presence was unmistakable, for it would be the sole source of light in the night sky. Initially, as the ball of light slowly ascended, its glow was soft and gentle. Qinming couldn't say for sure if it was just his imagination, but he thought he glimpsed a blurry insect-like silhouette within the light. Now it was too dazzling to resemble any insect. Its light interwove like a radiant disk, or perhaps a divine crown casting its glow across the night sky. The moon insect, oblivious to the seasons, was an anomaly. Normally, few insects could survive the winter to see the following year. According to the elders, the moon insect had migrated to this area over 50 years ago, dwelling deep within the Majestic mountains and rarely appearing in the outer regions. Local customs had long recorded it as a famous insect that has stood firm in the mountains for 50 years. People had reason to believe its true power might rival that of even older mythical beasts and mountain lords that have existed for even longer. Qinming was lost in thought. Had the moon truly looked like this in ancient times? In the night sky, it resembled a celestial lamp suspended high above, radiating brilliance and casting a pure, silvery light that bathed the dark mountains and desolate ridges. In an instant, the entire area was tinged with a faint silver hue. This was utterly unlike anything he had ever seen before. The deep, inky darkness of the mountains had been completely dispelled. The entire world had transformed. Gazing at this breathtaking scene, Qinming couldn't help but yearn for the ancient era of sun and moon, wondering what kind of world it had been. Qinming knew the moon insect only illuminated the two nearby low mountains, far inferior to the true moon, legendarily, a radiant light that shone across 10,000 miles, a vast and boundless spectacle, the true great brightness. At this moment, everything was silent. Neither the wild boar king nor the mysterious creature hunting it, nor any other birds or beasts, dared to stir from their hidden lairs. Suddenly, a streak of light pierced the night sky. The moon insect vanished, and the area rapidly lost its luster, plunging the mountains and forests back into boundless darkness. Qinming felt a profound emptiness in his heart. A powerful longing surged within him. When would he be able to move as freely as the moon insect, coming and going at will, with eternal night unable to obscure his path? He couldn't afford to dwell on it. Seizing the moment while the various beasts were still stunned and hesitant to emerge, he acted swiftly. Pulling the blade-horned deer and the donkey-headed wolf, he scaled the low mountains and quickly retreated. Deep within the mountains, a mournful howl erupted, then abruptly ceased. It seemed a powerful creature had been slain at the spot where the moon insect had descended. Silence fell over the forest. Neither the extraordinary mutated beasts nor the repeatedly mutated, famous birds, dared to make a sound. Twin Tree Village came into view. Qinming returned safely with his prey. As he neared the village entrance, he glanced back. The vast wilderness stretched endlessly into the inky blackness. The recent dazzling spectacle still lingered in his mind, leaving him somewhat dazed. Where was the ancient moon that once illuminated the returning colorful clouds? Grumble. His stomach rumbled, the sharp pang of hunger pulling him back to reality. He shook his head, wondering why he was lost in such ethereal thoughts. He needed to solve his immediate problem, food. In this biting cold, only a few children were playing tag at the village entrance, unwilling to stay indoors. Brother Qin, you went into the mountains and hunted a blade-horned deer all by yourself. A skinny boy's eyes widened in astonishment. The children's faces were flushed red from the cold as they gathered around, their eyes widening in fear at the sight of the donkey-headed wolf, which weighed several hundred pounds. They stared at the two carcasses, unable to resist swallowing their saliva. Come to my house later for meat, Qinming said with a smile. He moved like a gust of wind, dragging the two carcasses back to his home. He had endured the entire journey, yearning to experience the primal life of eating raw meat and drinking blood. He immediately started boiling water and called Lu Zi and Liang Wanqing to help. Xiao Qin, are you injured? Liang Wanqing, ever observant, noticed the bloodstains on his shoulder. Just a scratch, nothing to worry about, Qinming said, shaking his head. Lu Zi examined the wound, saw it was shallow and already crusted over, and relaxed. Soon, the small courtyard was filled with the rich aroma of roasting meat. A large pot of meat simmered over the fire, while a deer leg dripped with fat as it roasted over the flames. Qinming's stomach rumbled in anticipation. He couldn't wait any longer. He sliced off a thin piece of the deer leg with his knife, ignoring the heat, and popped it directly into his mouth. It's done. And it tastes amazing. Wen Rui, did your uncle fulfill your wish today? Wen Rui took a bite, his eyes curving into crescent moons of pure bliss. He nodded enthusiastically, like a chick pecking at grain. So fragrant. I've forgotten how long it's been since I last ate meat. Uncle, you're the best. Qinming gestured for Lu Zi and Liang Wanqing to eat first, promising to clean up the remaining meat later. 2-year-old Wenwei couldn't chew the roasted deer leg, so he had to settle for mashed meat paste. He pouted in frustration, his eyes fixed longingly on the roasting meat, making everyone laugh. Qinming was in a critical period of recovery, and his body had repeatedly sent strong signals of intense craving for meat. Now, he devoured the food ravenously, finally satisfying his hunger. At that moment, several children peeked through the courtyard gate. Their faces were smudged with dirt, and the aroma of meat wafting from the courtyard made their eyes sparkle with longing, but they hesitated to enter. Qinming immediately waved them in. Didn't I call out to you at the village entrance? Come on in, let's eat together. Thank you, Brother Qin. Uncle, you're so kind. The children responded with a mix of greetings and shyly entered the courtyard. Soon, they were stuffing their cheeks like little hamsters, mumbling incoherently about how delicious the food was. Slow down, there's plenty for everyone. Liang Wanqing said, worried they might choke. She ladled some meat broth into their bowls. Qinming felt his flesh and blood rejoice, as if a long-parched land had been blessed with life-giving rain. Countless new buds burst from the soil, and all things were reborn, brimming with boundless vitality. He could clearly feel his tendons growing, his joints occasionally cracking, and his senses sharpening. His spirit surged with unprecedented vigor. After being awakened, his body was truly being reborn. Lu Zi and Liang Wanqing had already set down their bowls and chopsticks, but Qinming continued to devour the meat ravenously. His appetite seemed bottomless, and his eating style was somewhat alarming. Sweat poured from his body, creating a thick mist that swirled around him. His body is regenerating, undergoing drastic changes. Lu Zi was astonished. He hadn't expected Qinming's awakened transformation, which had begun yesterday, to continue until now, and even accelerate. What level was he approaching? The children, their bellies round and bulging, wore expressions of utter contentment. Qinming noticed their restraint and smiled. Have you all eaten enough? Then go play. News of his successful hunt of a blade-horned deer and a donkey-headed wolf soon spread through the village. The villagers were astonished. At this stage, the wilderness was incredibly dangerous, and many people dared not venture into the mountains. Yet Qinming had achieved such a feat. Especially the mutated donkey-headed wolf, whose fearsome reputation was well known. Ordinary people rarely survived encounters with it. Qinming was only 16 years old. How could he possibly have defeated such a massive beast, weighing hundreds of pounds? Could he have been awakened during his golden years? Suddenly, Qinming's courtyard was swarming with people eager to learn about the mountain's conditions. If it was safe, they planned to go hunting themselves. Mom, I'm hungry, a little girl in patched clothes whispered. In this winter of scarcity, the aroma of roasting meat in the courtyard was especially rich, drawing the hungry gazes of children hiding behind their parents. Qinming knew the pangs of hunger all too well. Seeing their frozen, crimson faces and pitiful expressions, he quickly waved them over. Come, all of you, eat with us. The children hesitated, first looking at their parents, their simple and reserved natures prevailing. Qinming continued, uncles, aunts, I won't ask you to join us here. Instead, I'll give each family 5 catties of meat to take home later. Xiao Qin, that's too much. It's settled, Qinming said. With only a few dozen households in the village, there was more than enough to share. Xiao Qin is such a good man. We should all keep an eye out and find him a beautiful wife. He's about the right age. No need to rush, Qinming quickly waved his hand. The courtyard filled with laughter, and the children were the happiest of all. They gathered around the fire, their faces glistening with oil as they devoured the meat. Xiao Qin, tell me the truth, have you been awakened? Yang Yongqing arrived. He had seen Qinming earlier that evening, just before dusk. To have killed a mutated donkey-headed wolf so soon after their parting had truly startled him. Qinming smiled and nodded. Didn't Uncle Yang say a noble lady was coming down? You told me to work hard to improve myself and make a good impression. Also, I faced danger in the mountains. The shock triggered something in me. My body kept getting hotter, and suddenly, I was awakened. You rascal, you're not being honest enough, Yang Yongqing chuckled, pointing at him. Everyone present knew the truth. It was all due to Qinming's extraordinary physical constitution and deep accumulation of energy. Awakening in the golden years. This is the first time in decades for our twin tree village. Old Lu, who lived at the village entrance, exclaimed. Everyone understood the significance. Such a feat was dazzling even across this entire region, promising boundless potential for the future. In this frigid weather, where exhaled breath crystallized into frost, Qinming's body felt like a furnace, growing hotter by the moment. He was drenched in sweat, his skin slick and glistening, quickly becoming enveloped in a thick white mist. Such intense vitality. Far more potent than my own awakening back then, Yang Yongqing's beard trembled with shock. He knew Qin Ming's entire being, from head to toe, inside and out, was undergoing rapid awakening. First, like autumn and winter, shedding withered leaves. Then, like spring and summer, sprouting new branches and buds. Qin Ming's skin felt sticky, as if he were shedding yellow leaves and expelling old impurities. Yet within, a vibrant vitality surged. His blood glowed, and he felt as if he were returning to his mother's womb, nurturing a vigorous new life force that would reopen the limits of his body. Drowsiness washed over Qin Ming. After eating and drinking his fill, he felt as if he were about to enter a special kind of hibernation, his eyelids growing heavy. He asked Lu Zi to distribute the meat to each family while he followed his body's instincts and prepared to sleep deeply in his room. Granny Zhou is being buried today. Could you go on my behalf and deliver extra meat to the Zhou family? Qin Ming forced himself to stay awake, washing his body with icy water before collapsing onto the heated bed. The others watched in astonishment, though they didn't fully grasp the significance of what they were witnessing. Yang Yongqing, having seen the world, noticed Qin Ming was enveloped in a white, ethereal mist. More astonishingly, his powerful heartbeat sounded like a drumbeat, sending a shock through Yang Yongqing's heart. Most importantly, Qin Ming's awakening was still underway, far from complete. Could it be that after this awakening, Qin Ming might have a slim chance of approaching the renowned young prodigies of the distant, luminous city? Yang Yongqing quickly shook his head. No matter how excellent Qin Ming's natural talent, how could it compare to the accumulated advantages of 3 generations? Moreover, those prodigies were already exceptional in their own right. As for the male and female awakened individuals who had recently stunned the city, surpassing the golden age for awakening, Yang Yongqing dismissed them as incomparable. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 9, The Gold-Threaded Jade Garment. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. As dawn approached, Qin Ming woke up. The sunstone in the copper basin emitted a soft, fiery glow, and the house was silent. Parched with thirst, his throat felt like it was on fire. After gulping down several large bowls of ice water, he finally let out a long sigh. He soon noticed something amiss. His close-fitting clothes felt slightly tight, almost too small. Realizing what had happened, he stood in the doorway and measured himself against the frame. He confirmed that he had grown taller. Qin Ming was stunned. He had only slept for a short while, but the process had been extraordinary. In a remarkably short time, a potent force of awakening had gestated within him, causing his innate foundation to develop further. He stretched his limbs, feeling as if he had an inexhaustible supply of energy. Stepping into the courtyard, he effortlessly lifted 2 stone millstones. Next, he tried to hold one up with a single hand. Though it felt incredibly heavy, he managed to support it for a brief moment. Qin Ming was astonished. He could now barely lift a 400 jin weight with one hand. Did this mean he was now on par with the renowned young men of that distant, luminous city? He stripped off his ill-fitting clothes and found that the blood crust on his shoulder had already fallen off, leaving no scar behind. This was another sign of his awakening. Next, he began preparing dinner. Qin Ming boiled a pot of meat broth and grilled wolf ribs until they were fragrant and tempting. The mutant creature ingredients were more than enough to fuel his body's awakening process. He devoured the meat in large bites and drank the broth from a large bowl. His body was already burning hot, and now he was drenched in sweat. A surge of heat coursed through his veins, spreading throughout his body. Though the final stages of awakening had begun, it wasn't over yet. He wanted to strike while the iron was hot, fully activating his body's vitality to accelerate the process. His physical constitution had improved dramatically. The difficult maneuvers he had struggled with before were now effortless and graceful. A fiery glow seemed to burn within Qin Ming, threatening to burst through his skin. Finally, golden speckles appeared all over his body. They then broke through the surface, and tiny golden bristles emerged, barely visible but unmistakable. This was unprecedented. It had never happened before. The golden bristles sprouted from his flesh, tinged with faint traces of blood. Though alarming at first glance, they posed no real threat to his body. Qin Ming actually felt a sense of relief. The qi energy in his body became increasingly fresh, vibrant, and full of vitality, a process akin to detoxification. He soon realized what was happening. He was undergoing a thorough regeneration awakening, purging all harmful substances. His original pores seemed insufficient. Clusters of golden bristles began sprouting from his body, emerging with faint traces of blood, carrying out old impurities. Golden light continued to emerge, dense and numerous, like golden needles dancing across his skin, responding to each other, weaving across Qin Ming's body as if sewing a garment. This created a surreal spectacle. Combined with the faint white mist surrounding him, he appeared quite ethereal. He worked tirelessly, expending enormous energy. When hungry, he ate wolf ribs, resting briefly before resuming his stimulation of his body's vitality. Occasionally, he would also study Lu Zi's night meditation technique. Throughout the night, Qinming sweated profusely, his metabolism surging. His body tingled, as if sprouting new branches and leaves, bursting with life and carrying the scent of the world's first dawn. When overwhelming drowsiness finally struck, he stopped moving. He realized he was about to enter the final stage of hibernation. After a quick rinse, he collapsed onto the bed, his eyelids barely able to stay open. Through a haze, he saw a faint silver light emerge on his skin, along with countless golden bristles erupting like golden needles weaving through a silver-white mist. Though utterly exhausted, Qinming was deeply astonished. The golden threads crisscrossed, dividing the silver light into countless tiny squares, forming a dense grid pattern. Viewed as a whole, his body seemed to be encased in a gold-threaded jade garment. He drifted into a daze, his thoughts wandering. Ancient emperors were buried in gold-threaded jade garment, their bodies adorned with pearl-embroidered robes and jade caskets, all bound together with gold thread, a testament to their eternal longing for immortality, a pursuit that continued even in death. Could the unorthodox technique he'd memorized as a child be so extraordinary? During his awakening, a layer of pure white mist naturally flowed around him, and the golden threads interlinked, as if he were donning a gold-threaded jade garment. Had ancient emperors heard rumors that inspired them to commission the creation of these suits? He shook his head, dismissing the thought as an overactive imagination. Soon, he could no longer resist the overwhelming fatigue and drifted into the deepest slumber. As dawn approached, Qinming woke up, feeling stiff and constricted. He quickly realized what had happened. He'd sweated profusely during the night, and the golden needles had drawn out tiny droplets of blood. This, old filth, had dried on his skin, forming a thin cocoon. The water tank held a solid block of ice. After smashing it into fragments, Qinming boiled a pot of water. After washing and changing into loose, clean clothes, he felt refreshed and invigorated. It was clear his body temperature had dropped, indicating that his awakening was nearly complete. Qinming went to the courtyard and lifted 2 stone millstones again. This time, it was much easier, he could hold them up with one hand for a long time. Next, he added 100 jin stone lock on top. Heavy. He thought, feeling the weight pressing down on his hand. It took considerable effort to hold it. The 2 rough stone millstones, combined with the stone lock for arm strength training, weighed over 500 jin in total, yet he could still support them with one hand. Lu Zi had told him about a young man in the distant, luminous city who could lift a 600 jin bronze cauldron. Qinming's eyes were clear, and a radiant smile spread across his face. His arms now possessed 1,000 jin of strength. As for the mysterious, unknown cities at the edge of the world, he had no idea how powerful the awakened individuals during their golden age might be. Qinming picked up half a blade-horned deer, a hind leg and part of the rib cage of a donkey-headed wolf, and went to the neighboring courtyard. Xiao Qin, this is far too much. Brother Lu, sister-in-law, I can't finish all this myself. I'll be going back into the mountains soon anyway, so it's better to change things up, Qinming said. If Lu Zi hadn't taken care of him recently, he might have starved to death. Uncle, you're so kind. Otherwise, we'd be starving in a few days, Wen Rui said, his face beaming. He'd overheard his parents saying their family's food stores were running low. Qinming ruffled his hair. As long as your uncle is around, you'll never go hungry. The mutant squirrel in its cage hopped and darted around, the only one still furious. It chittered angrily at Qinming, this intelligent little mountain beast holding a grudge. Xiao Qin. Village chief Xu Yuping arrived, wearing a fur-lined coat. In his 40s, he had a square face, thick eyebrows, piercing eyes, and a sturdy build. Uncle Xu, Qinming greeted him. The village chief laughed heartily. I knew you'd pull through, kid. This step you've taken is like leaving a golden footprint. He was eager to see how strong Qinming's physical abilities had become after his awakening during the Golden Age. Xiao Qin, you've grown taller. Is your awakening complete? Lu Zi asked. Just as Qinming was about to respond, he suddenly felt a gust of wind rush towards him. Xu Yiping's right hand, sharp as a blade, slashed towards his neck without warning. The attack was so sudden and the distance so close that Qinming had no time to react. Yet he managed to dodge the blow and counter with precision, grabbing Xu Yiping's wrist with a resounding thud. Your reaction speed far surpasses that of other awakened individuals, Xu Yuping exclaimed, genuinely astonished. At such close range, even the most agile mountain beasts would struggle to evade his surprise attack. Liang Wanqing gasped, then realized Xu Yuping was testing Qinming's foundation after his awakening. Xu Yiping's wrist was held firmly, and to his surprise, he couldn't budge it even an inch. The power of your awakening, he said, his eyes widening in disbelief. Lu Zi and Liang Wanqing watched with anticipation, hoping Qinming's physical abilities had undergone a significant transformation, a qualitative leap. After all, this was a life-altering opportunity, a chance to rewrite one's destiny. Qinming released his grip. Xu Yiping's eyelids twitched violently. As the strongest reborn in Twin Tree Village, he could tell the young man hadn't even used his full strength. He spoke solemnly, I estimate your current strength is close to 600 jin. Liang Wanqing was stunned. She knew that the strongest awakener in this area could only lift a maximum of 500 jin. Lu Zi was thrilled. Even if he went to that city in the distance, he wouldn't be any worse than the people there. Uncle is the best. Wen Rui clapped his hands and cheered. Old Shu, the mountain patrol group is here, Yang Yongqing said, arriving just in time to hear the conversation. His heart pounded. He realized that Qin Ming had shattered the local awakening limit. The mountain patrol group's arrival meant something serious was happening. Shu Yuping and Yang Yongqing quickly left. A quarter of an hour later, someone came to summon Qin Ming to the village chief's house. He was puzzled. Why had they called for him? All awakeners must attend. The mountain patrol group will be briefing us on the situation in the mountains, the messenger explained. Shu Yiping's house was bustling. Including Qin Ming, there were 7 awakeners in the village, all present. Even old Lu, who was over 70, hadn't missed the meeting. The sunstone illuminated the room brightly, creating a warm atmosphere. The mountain patrol group's representative, Feng Yian, was describing the recent changes in the mountains. The magnetic field in the mountains has been unstable recently, Feng Yian said, his face framed by a thick, unkempt beard. He drank his tea in one gulp, his manner rough and unrefined. Venturing deep into the mountains is easy to get lost, and strange events have been occurring. The fire springs where dangerous creatures dwell are nearly extinguished, while high-level fire springs have emerged deep within the night mist. Qin Ming finally understood why the mountains had been so chaotic lately, with colossal creatures appearing near the edge of the dense forests. The upheaval in the mountains had disrupted the nests of rare birds and exotic beasts, causing them to stir and drive other creatures to flee. Will the situation worsen? What if high-level species break out? Someone asked. Rest assured, everyone, Feng Yian replied. High-ranking figures will enter the mountains to negotiate with those mysterious creatures and restore peace to the area as quickly as possible. He assured them that even if negotiations failed, powerful individuals would block the mountain's top-tier creatures from escaping. As a precaution, the mountain patrol group members are on high alert, and all awakeners of villages and towns outside the mountains must prepare for any eventuality. Feng Yian explained that the high-level net was primarily to prevent top-tier creatures from escaping, but smaller creatures might slip through the mesh. The faces of those present grew solemn upon hearing this. Awakened cultivators would have to join the fight if necessary. Feng Yian chuckled. Don't worry, it's not as dire as it sounds. Besides, if a major battle erupts, the luminous city in the distance will send noble youths here for training. They're all elites and will help us sweep the mountain. The people in the room breathed a collective sigh of relief. Brother Feng, you patrolled the mountain all night and then came here early this morning to deliver this message. You've worked incredibly hard, Shu Yuping said. Feng Yian waved his hand. Brother Shu, what are you saying? This is my duty. Rest assured, if any ferocious beasts or mountain monsters break through, they'll have to step over our corpses first. They won't harm anyone outside the mountain. Shu Yuping personally brought in a large iron platter holding an entire roasted rock sheep, its aroma filling the room. He offered it to Feng Yian. He stopped several people who were about to leave. Don't go yet. Let's all stay and share a few drinks with Brother Feng. The atmosphere in the room immediately warmed up. Let me tell you all, Feng Yian said after a few cups of wine, there's no need to worry. Not only will the city lord who governs this region be attending, but we've also invited a master from afar. There won't be any trouble. The main purpose is to guard against the moon insects and any unpredictable mountain lords. Qin Ming listened intently, surprised by the information. Unaccustomed to the spicy old wine, he reached for a cup of tea but hesitated. Besides bitter tea, it contained dried ants the size of thumb pads, making the tea's composition complex. Shu Yuping chuckled. Xiao Qin, a man must learn to drink. And these black ants are incredibly nourishing, a true delicacy. Feng Yian turned to Qin Ming. This young man looks unfamiliar. Uncle Feng, just call me Xiao Qin. Shu Yuping introduced, this is Qin Ming, just over 16 years old. He recently achieved awakening and is the most promising young man in our region. I hope he can study in the distant Crimson Cloud Kaisha city. A fine seedling, Feng Yian said with deep feeling. To undergo awakening transformation during the Golden Age, what a foundation to envy. The others chimed in with praise and envy, fully aware of the immense potential held by those with a Golden Age foundation. They raised their cups repeatedly, the atmosphere around the table growing lively. Feng Yian shared some bizarre tales from the mountains. Have any of you ever seen a mysterious field deep in the mountains? All the crops glow golden, and the thick fog can't conceal their brilliant light, which pierces the dark night sky. Whose food could it be? Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 10, The Invisible Zone. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. The fields were neatly furrowed, and the crops, from their roots to their leaves and golden ears, shone brilliantly, like golden ornaments standing out starkly against the deep black mountains, shrouded in an aura of mystery. Everyone present was captivated by Feng Yian's words. Could such a strange sight truly exist in the dense night fog of the mountains? Who cultivates these fields? Xu Yuping asked. Feng Yian shook his head. The mountain patrolman who had stumbled upon the place while lost had dared not approach. They had immediately reported the discovery, and high-ranking officials had personally investigated, but they could never find it again. Old Lu, who was over 70, sighed. The night is boundless, and the deep mountains and vast marshes hold countless unknown things. The vast, uninhabited wilderness is extremely dangerous. Even the distant city lord would find it difficult to venture deep within. Old Lu, have you ever encountered anything strange yourself? Qin Ming asked. Old Lu nodded, a nostalgic look in his eyes. Strange things aren't limited to the wilderness. Even near our village, there have been odd occurrences. Back then, he was just a boy, flying kites with his friends at the village entrance. When they reeled in the string, they found it sticky, and the kite was covered in blood. Right at the edge of our village. Yang Yongqing exclaimed, involuntarily gazing out the window into the night sky. After a moment's hesitation, Qin Ming suggested, could it have been an injured bird that collided with the kite? Perhaps, Old Lu replied. When my grandfather saw the blood-stained kite string back then, his face immediately turned pale. He told me to keep the matter buried deep within me. Decades have passed since then. Such an incident happening right at their doorstep made everyone feel uneasy. Xu Yuping said, Brother Feng, why don't you tell us some stories from the mountains? Have you ever heard of mountain beasts crying at graves? Feng Yian asked cautiously, his expression a complex mix of reverence and apprehension. Crying at what kind of graves? Someone asked. They spent their lives traversing the mountains but had never encountered such a thing. Feng Yian replied, beast tombs. Wild beasts practice burial. Xu Yuping was astonished. Feng Yian nodded. The fog-shrouded, uninhabited zones inspire awe. Anything bizarre is possible there. That day, the old team leader of the mountain patrol group sensed something amiss in the mountains. Fearing that some mysterious creature might be undergoing further transformation, potentially leading to disaster, he quietly approached. The old team leader wanted first-hand information to identify the specific, strange insect, or renowned beast, undergoing this transformation, allowing us to prepare preventive measures and precise countermeasures. After all, mutant creatures with multiple mutations each possess unique abilities, requiring different preparations and tactics to handle them. Midway through his approach, the old team leader suddenly realized the abnormal sound was crying. He didn't stop, and soon he saw a white-haired old beast sobbing in the night, weeping at a grave, a truly eerie sight. Feng Yian said, that dilapidated earthen tomb has stood for at least 1,000 years, as the ancient cypress growing from it has lived for at least that long. The old team leader watched the white-haired mountain beast kowtow like a human. Near the tomb, a rain of light poured down, illuminating the dark forest. Then, fierce birds of prey descended from the night sky, and monstrous creatures emerged from the swamp, all joining in the worship. Feng Yian paused here. What happened next? Someone urged. Feng Yian continued, the old team leader risked approaching to get a clear look at the white-haired mountain beast's true form, intending to research local records for targeted countermeasures. The white-haired old beast kowtowed, tears streaming down its face. Then, for no apparent reason, it began to mutate. The ritual of weeping at the grave seemed to elevate its life form. The old team leader quietly retreated, but on the way back, he began coughing up blood and his entire body became unbearably itchy. Though he managed to return and report what he had seen, his flesh rotted away, and he died. The higher-ups mobilized a large force and fought a fierce battle in the mountains. They say that if the news hadn't reached them in time, and the white-haired old beast had fully matured, it would have brought great disaster. The crowd's hearts grew heavy. While the world outside the mountains seemed peaceful, unseen battles raged in the shadows. Someone was silently guarding the mountains, fighting and dying in the process. Old Lu, his white hair and wrinkled face etched with age, sighed. The old team leader's fate isn't unique. When I was young, I had a close friend who spent years guarding the mountains, blocking dangerous mutant creatures. In his old age, he disappeared within the mountains, never to be seen again. Feng Yian nodded. Most members of the mountain patrol group have suffered serious injuries. Some never meet a peaceful end, leaving not even their bones behind. He cited the old team leader's master as an example. Back then, that old senior was incredibly skilled and highly respected. He had already retired in honor after losing an arm. But when he heard about a dangerous mountain monster, fearing the younger generation couldn't withstand it, he stopped others from risking their lives and went to confront the monster himself, despite his crippled body. In that battle, the old team leader's master severely wounded the mountain monster but was mortally wounded himself. All that remained of him was a large bloodstain and half a broken blade. His greatest wish in life was to be buried outside the mountains, alongside his deceased wife and children. But his wish was never fulfilled. His soul couldn't return home and was trapped in the dark mountains. Feng Yian sighed, shaking his head. The old man's wife and children had died prematurely due to the mountain monster's rampage, and he had remained unmarried for the rest of his life. The mountain patrol group brought back his blood-stained broken blade and buried it beside his wife and children's graves. Qinming fell silent, the spicy old wine losing all its flavor as he listened. Feng Yian's mood darkened. In the end, the mountain patrolmen either end up crippled, dead, or driven mad, lost in the mountains, reduced to eating raw, bloody meat like wild beasts, becoming monsters themselves. Alas, who knows what fate awaits us? Perhaps the mountains will be our final resting place as well. The atmosphere at the wine table was heavy. With the recent changes in the mountains and the impending sweep, no one knew what the future held. Feng Yian drained his cup in one gulp and said, "Brother Xu, I'll need you to plant these medicinal seeds." He solemnly retrieved a wooden box from his chest and opened it to reveal 4 black seeds, each about the size of a kidney bean. Xu Yuping was taken aback. "You want to plant them in winter?" Feng Yian's expression was grave. "If we place them in the fire spring now, they'll flourish by early spring. The mountain patrol group will undoubtedly be at the forefront of the upcoming battle. Some of our brothers' lives are already on a countdown, and even if they survive, they may be left crippled. I don't know if they'll even live long enough to see the black moon bloom. This medicine could save many lives, old Xu. You must take this seriously." Rooted in the fire spring, the black moon's leaves resembled orchids. When its plump buds finally burst into bloom, each petal would unfurl like a crescent moon, casting off a black, lustrous glow and swirling with white mist. Feng Yian wiped a few drops of wine from his thick beard and rose to take his leave. "Thank you for your hospitality, Brother Xu. If I survive the sweep, we'll gather again." "Brother Feng is highly skilled, he'll surely turn danger into fortune," Xu Yuping said. Everyone present escorted Feng Yian to the village entrance, watching him disappear into the night. The harvest isn't good this year, but the mountain patrol group has shown some consideration, sending only 4 seeds. The spiritual energy drawn from the fire spring can handle that, someone remarked. Mountain patrolmen not only monitored dangers in the mountains but also guarded them. Villages across the region were willing to cultivate life-saving medicinal herbs for them without resistance. According to their agreement, each village was to provide 4 to 8 black moon plants annually. With only 4, the impact on the crops in the fire fields wouldn't be too significant. The crowd dispersed. Old Lu, still lingering, stared at the 4 black seeds and muttered, "They really did manage to cultivate them." As Qinming left, he noticed Xu Yuping seemed preoccupied with something. The streets were bustling with people carrying bows and hunting forks, preparing to enter the mountains. Yesterday, they had questioned Qinming in detail about the mountain's conditions, and they began their hunt early this morning. The main reason for this urgency was that most families had little grain left, and food was becoming scarce. Big haul. We took down 2 blade-horned deer. A group returned with the good news, their harvest bountiful. For now, the outer areas of the mountain are relatively calm. As long as we don't venture too deep, we can hunt cautiously. The next day, even more people ventured into the mountains in groups, returning with a substantial amount of prey. Children erupted in cheers, unmindful of the cold. They ran through the streets, their breath forming white clouds, as if it were New Year's. The atmosphere in the village had noticeably improved. "Uncle, come to my house and try some fresh meat. We're having deer today," Wen Rui called out happily to Qinming. Qinming had just finished eating wild prey at Lu Zi's house when he saw Xu Yuping returning from the village entrance, his brow furrowed in worry. "Uncle Xu, were you seeing someone off?" "Yes, the mountain patrol group came. They're urging me to plant the black moon seeds," Xu Yuping replied. Qinming couldn't help but feel sympathy for the mountain patrolmen. They faced constant dangers, risking injury or even death at any moment. Seeing Xu Yuping's troubled expression, Qinming refrained from pressing him further. That day, the last group of people who had entered the mountains returned, causing a commotion. Most of them were injured and covered in blood, and they had lost all their prey. "That was close. We encountered a mutated snow ape. Old Chen almost lost an arm," one of the villagers who had escaped recounted with lingering fear. "Fortunately, we managed to drive it back with our bows and arrows and escape," they said, relieved to have survived. They agreed that they had ventured too deep into the mountains this time and wouldn't be so reckless again. As the thick night fog dissipated and a new day dawned, the injuries from the previous day hadn't deterred the others, especially since they had an awakened member with them. However, it wasn't long before another group returned, many of them covered in blood. The awakened member was the most severely injured. His left scapula was shattered, one leg was bent at an unnatural angle, his chest had partially collapsed, and his mouth was filled with bloody foam. It was unclear whether he would survive. "What happened? We encountered a blood bear," someone stammered, their lips trembling. The blood bear was a powerful mutant creature with blood-red fur, known for its ferocity and aggression. Even a awakened member would struggle to survive an encounter with it. Where's Brother Lu? Qinming rushed to the neighboring courtyard. He went into the mountains, Liang Wanqing said, her face immediately etched with worry upon hearing the news. I'm going to find him. Qinming turned and ran. Xu Yuping, upon learning that some of the survivors hadn't returned, grew anxious and ordered all the awakeners to enter the mountains together. Qinming sprinted ahead, sending up waves of snow on either side of him. The sight startled Xu Yuping, who was closest to him, into a momentary daze. The others had long since been left far behind. As he neared the forest, Qinming stopped abruptly. A group of survivors was staggering out, barely able to stand. He spotted Lu Zi among them, being carried out on a stretcher. Brother Lu. Qinming rushed forward. Lu Zi's face was ashen, his eyes closed. His clothes were torn and bloodstained, and his chest and abdomen bore the worst injuries, at least 3 broken ribs. Cries of grief filled the air. 2 of the critically wounded survivors being carried back had already succumbed to their injuries. Did the blood bear do this? Qinming asked. One survivor, his face pale with lingering fear, replied, yes. If the mountain patrolman hadn't appeared, many more of us would have died. Qinming stared into the dark forest, drawing his gleaming short knife. Xu Yuping arrived and blocked his path. Don't take any risks. Let's go back first. Liang Wanqing, seeing Lu Zi being carried back, turned deathly pale and stumbled toward him. The 2 children burst into tears. Sister-in-law, Brother Lu has only fainted, Qinming said. He had examined Lu Zi carefully. The broken ribs hadn't pierced any internal organs. After Qinming set the bones and treated the wounds, the situation wasn't too serious. Many people had been injured in the attack, and the cries of the elderly and children echoed through the streets. A heavy atmosphere hung over the village. Xu Yuping issued an order. From now on, no one was to enter the mountains. Qinming walked into Xu Yuping's courtyard and found old Lu and Yang Yongqing already there. You want to kill the blood bear? Xu Yuping asked from inside the house. Qinming replied softly, although Lu Zi has claw marks from the bear, his broken ribs look more like they were caused by a fist. You feel it too. Then it's likely the work of a human, Xu Yuping said, rising abruptly with a furious expression. Some people have gone too far. Qinming had suspected as much for a while, having formed some theories of his own. Ever since Xu Yuping had obtained the 4 seeds, he had been burdened with worry. Why? Qinming asked, though he had already guessed the truth, he found it hard to accept. Xu Yuping's voice was low. The mountain patrol group pressured me to plant the black moon seeds immediately. When I refused, they retaliated like this. Old Lu said, the seeds are the problem. They've mutated and are absorbing an excessive amount of the fire spring's spiritual energy, which will disrupt cultivation in the fire fields. Next year, there might be a famine. Qinming was deeply troubled. He had initially found Feng Yian, the burly man with the long beard, to be quite heroic. Feng Yian had shared some of the mountain patrolman's tragic past, which had moved Qinming. Yet, Feng Yian had turned out to be capable of such a despicable act. Yang Yongqing said, everything Feng Yian mentioned was true, but it has nothing to do with the current core members of this group. Qinming recalled Yang Yongqing's earlier words, some mountain patrolmen are very responsible. At the time, Qinming had sensed that Yang Yongqing was subtly hinting that others were far from responsible, expressing his meaning with considerable restraint. Old Lu lowered his voice. This group once hunted a blood bear. I strongly suspect that someone is now wearing that bear's hide to commit evil deeds. Upon hearing this, Qinming felt a surge of anger rise within him. Mountain patrolmen were supposed to guard the mountains and protect the people, earning their respect. But what were they doing? Presenting a facade of generosity and responsibility, while secretly committing evil deeds, their hands stained with the blood of villagers. Where had their conscience gone? Brother Xu, are you home? Feng Yian led 4 mountain patrolmen into the courtyard. It's all our fault. We failed in our duty this time and couldn't protect our fellow villagers, said Feng Yian, the burly leader, his face etched with guilt. He immediately vowed to pursue and kill the blood bear. Xu Yiping's knuckles, hidden beneath his sleeves, turned white from clenching his fists. Yet he couldn't lash out. He had to maintain a composed demeanor. His heart ached. After committing murder, they had the audacity to come here and apologize. It was like they were standing on his neck, looking down at him with mocking smiles. Qinming sat quietly, temporarily suppressing the urge to draw his sword. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel.